What's going on, everybody? Tarkov Gamer guys back yet again, or Escape from Tarkov action. Today's video, what I want to do, since we have had a ton of new barter items added to the game, and I am a personal fan favorite of accelerating your progress in the hideout to a certain extent, I think it's important we jump in, probably for the newer players, or if you haven't been to Tarkov in a while, let's spend a little bit of time talking about what do you need for your hideout, at least through levels 1 and level 2 that you should be hanging on to, you should be throwing into a secure container if you find it in raid, and what's going to be really valuable for you to sell on the flea market here in the early days of the wipe. So without further ado, let's jump in. Let's talk some barter items. Okay, so really quickly what I want to do is give you a quick rundown. I am currently on my escape account. I have yet to record anything on this, and I think this is a perfect chance to take a look at how do you need to get started. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about the hideout. If you have questions related to the hideout, please certainly feel free, drop them below. I'll certainly help to answer any questions that I can. Really enjoy helping newer players or players that are coming back to the game after a little bit of a break, so please drop that down below. What I will tell you is there is a ton of additional benefits that the hideout is going to allow you to progress with. In addition to the flea market changes, currently it's level 15 for this wipe. With the changes to the flea market and what can be sold there, hideout progression becomes extremely more important, in my opinion, to be able to help you unlock some of the upper tier ammos, and now have the ability with Lavatory level 3 to craft some upper tier armors. So I think the utility of the hideout has increased with the reduction in some of the flea market items that you can post, and I think that is a good balance. So this wipe especially, I feel, is going to very strongly reward those that are looking at jumping in and spend some time focused on hideout upgrades. Now, granted, it can be extremely expensive, especially for those running just a standard account. So focusing on this quickly, getting some of the additional perks, some of the additional benefits, and then continuing to progress as you level your traders up is going to be a huge value for you. But let's spend some time talking about what's important for you to jump into and to find quickly. There's a few items that seem to be a little bit harder. So if you're just starting to get into your wipe and you're not sure what you should container, let me offer a couple of really quick suggestions. The first one ends up being for security, and this is how fresh this account is. I haven't searched anything. Construction tape, okay? This isn't wholeheartedly a very difficult item to find. It seems like in tech crates and the large tech crates, toolboxes, this has a decently good spawn. Interchange and quite a few other locations, this will spawn pretty regularly. I will tell you though, it felt like a lot of times people had a pretty tough time finding this item, at least at the beginning stages of the wipe. I will tell you, I have progressed pretty well on my main account. I've run across these enough that I feel like it is pretty easy to find, although because security is such a vital an important roadblock to a lot of the rest of the hideout upgrades, construction tape is a great one to grab, container very quickly. That way you can get this thing rocking and rolling. The nice part ends up being with a lot of these level 1 hideout upgrades, you don't need a ton of items. So this is a great one if you don't have a ton of container space. If you're running just an alpha on a standard account, or maybe you got the gamma with EOD, this is still a good thing to throw in, and you know that you'll be able to use it. In addition, these first hideout upgrades, as you probably know, are relatively inexpensive, so you can get security up and running pretty quickly. There is some additional benefit to having a measuring tape. These don't sell super well on the flea market. If you do choose to wait until level 15 and then start buying these things, you can certainly do that, but I think you can make pretty good progress prior to level 15 in getting some good hideout upgrades done. So that's one. You know that Vents is going to be able to pretty quickly be able to be constructed with just a little bit. Illumination tends to be another one, and so two things that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. One, cricket lighters. Best place to find this is actually going to be on any kind of like flammable spawn. There's a couple at the back of Interchange right behind Goshen. You have a couple on customs. I want to say there's a few on woods as well, and then there's a couple sprinkled throughout. Filing cabinets and jackets also do seem to have these in it, although the spawn rate for the cricket lighter ends up being pretty low. This item stayed pretty high in value for quite a while and is still selling okay on the flea market as it stands right now. It's just demand has dropped off since a lot of players have grabbed the one that they need in order to get this. Illumination ends up being another blocking hideout upgrade for a lot of the rest of the upgrades, so do consider wanting to move quickly with Illumination. Illumination also tends to be one of the more expensive initial upgrades because you need a ton of wires and a ton of light bulbs for level 2, and then you need a ton of ES lamps for level 3. So those would be the other two things that I'm going to recommend. Wires, you need a boatload of wires, an absolute boatload of wires for a ton of hideout upgrades, especially level 1 and really level 2 is where you start to spend a ton of them. Wires are also extremely valuable to craft things like power cords. Wires also sell extremely well in the flea market. So if you have any spare and you get to 15, maybe you've done a few of your hideout upgrades and you're a little low on cash, wires are selling fantastically right now and probably will continue on at least for a couple of weeks as players get more into the wipe. The nice part ends up being you can also break down power cords, you can do some shifting back and forth of some resources, but wires, light bulbs is going to be the other thing. Light bulbs have been spawning pretty well. Again, interchange ends up being a really good location for a lot of these, as well as tech crates and toolboxes. Filing cabinets also I have found to come have spawns of light bulbs in them. So filing cabinets have gotten a lot better since the previous wipe. You need, I think, 14 of them for Illumination 2. So it is paramount that you start hanging on to those, container them when you can. They sell pretty well in addition to that. So if you stockpile some and you get more than you need, they will still sell on the flea market pretty well, just like the wires will. So it is not a waste of the investment of space and inventory to hang on to those. And then ES lamps, you do need quite a few of those. Those don't seem to be as difficult. I actually had an easier time finding the ES lamps than I did the light bulbs, but it's really dependent on where you run a lot. Again, interchange is going to be the best for a lot of these things, but I had a lot of success finding a lot of the items I needed on woods as well as customs. There's quite a few good locations, and then people would recommend probably reserve for quite a few of the tech spawn items as well. If you are a standard account user, what I would tell you is you definitely want to focus on a handful of these items here. The small WD-40s is pretty easy, but screws specifically and packs of nails. These are going to be two other things that you want to consider containering. The nice part about both of these items ends up being these will continue to sell pretty well throughout the course of the wipe because they are used in higher level barter trades. In addition, they are used for a few additional hideout upgrades. You need you need packs of nails and packs of screws, for your shooting range upgrade and a handful of other things. So these become extremely valuable, and you need a ton of them. You need a lot of these over the course of your hideout upgrades. So do consider that, and especially stash should be one of the first things that you try to focus on if you are a standard account, and you need to get that upgrade space. These upgrades are huge. The extra stash space is absolutely ginormous. 2.5 million rubles can feel like a lot. You definitely will not regret it. So packs of nails and screws, take a look at hanging on to those. As we take a look at Lavatory, the one thing I'm going to highlight here, nothing too difficult, but this is a new barter item for this wipe. Not super expensive on the flea market, but this ends up being another one of the more difficult items to find. For whatever reason, it seems like BSG has this tendency sometimes when they introduce a new tool, especially, and this is a tool that's used for quite additional hideout crafts. That's the word I couldn't think of. It's used for a lot of different hideout crafts, especially crafting upper level armors, some of the ammos as well. So this is a great tool to grab and to hang on to, but it generally can be a little bit more difficult. I had really good success actually finding this on woods. There are a couple of good tech spawns. There's a small village, if you're familiar with the standard village, that's right by the car extract. There's another couple of houses and some side huts with a couple of toolboxes in it. I think one has a toolbox and one has a duffel bag. I actually had really good success for finding those inside of there. So do consider that. And this ends up being a tool that if you find this, one or two of these, I would definitely container them and make sure that you hang on to them. And obviously Lavatory is one of those ones that you want to get up pretty quickly. You're going to be able to craft your 60 rounders out of this, which is really good for ice cream cones and can help you get ahead of that quest progress. In addition, level 3 of Lavatory has become, I think, going to be really, really big for a lot of players with the ability you can craft you can craft Level 4 armors, utilizing a few different things. You can craft TV10s. You can craft some other pretty dang good stuff at level 3. So please consider that. You can't craft a Corund. You need a Corund for one of the crafts. But to be able to get a TV10 is pretty good. Nuts and bolts here. These are two things that I don't necessarily think you need specifically for Hideout Upgrade Progress. However, don't think you specifically need these for Hideout Progress outside of getting obviously your workbench up, the ability to craft and mod weapons. But these are two things that you're going to need a whole bunch of if you want to do some really good crafts in the Hideout. Lavatory, I talked about how important it is. You can craft both mag boxes and grenade boxes with handfuls of these and a few other things. You're going to burn some fuel containers. You need some of the big 2x3 fuels or 2x2 blue fuels to be able to do that, but they end up being some really good crafts early on, especially if you're using your fuel for a few other things in the Hideout to get some stuff done. Nuts and bolts are also two things that are always going to sell fantastically in the flea market. Right now, any given time, these can be between the 20 and 30,000 ruble range. So if you're finding them, you certainly will find use for them inside of your Hideout. In addition to that, if you end up getting them out of raid with the found in raid checkmark, you're going to be able to put them in the flea market and make a boatload of money. So make sure that you're grabbing these. I grab these every single opportunity, even now when I find them, just because that's how valuable they are. So med station, not a ton I want to talk about here with the exception of vitamins. This is again a new item. Generally seems to be a little bit more on the difficult side to find. For me, again, I run a lot of woods early if you can't tell. There is the small med fob. I have found quite a few of these on the tables and inside the med crates and the med bags that are there. You can find these other places. Med bags seem to have a pretty decent spawn rate. They're not selling for a ton on the flea, probably anywhere between 15 and 20,000 rubles. Pretty good if you end up finding them. They are needed for quite a few of the med station crafts as well, so do please consider that. But again, because you need this to get going, this is a really good one to grab up front. Med station is important for getting it upgraded at least through level 2 because it offers some pretty good things for you to be able to craft. You can end up crafting your Salewas out of med station as well if you're having trouble finding those for your early task. So do consider that. I actually did that this wipe. I crafted one that I ended up needing for Therapist's early game quest. So do consider that. And I was able to get these pretty quick, get my med station upgraded, so I was able to craft that. So consider throwing these in there. Outside of one or two, I wouldn't stress too much about them, but this is definitely something that you want to hang on to. Syringes are always a good take as well. Kind of one of the side notable ones. These sell really well. They're used for some pretty good barters as well with Therapist as you get a little bit farther into her quest line and get her upgraded. And these always tend to sell pretty well on the flea market as well. So do consider that. I said as well there quite a bit. So heating here. Matches. You actually need quite a few small classic matches. Hunting matches, in addition to these, both of these I think are really good takes. The biggest reason ends up being is they seem to be generally a little bit on the lower side from a spawn. Hunting matches have definitely gotten a big boost this wipe. So I think you're going to have a much easier time finding those than we did, at least in the previous wipe. So those spawns feel a lot better. But do consider if you see matches, especially early, make sure to grab these. I think you need one of these for one of your other hideout upgrades. In addition to, I think, so rest space, I think, needs a matches and a single duct tape. So do consider that. And you obviously need two here for heating. A few other things that I just want to spend some time talking about, and I touched on really quickly. Again, classic matches, which we just showed, hunting matches, both good things. You are going to need some duct tapes. Specifically, white duct tape ends up being one of the things that you need the most. In addition, corrugated hose. If you're not familiar with corrugated hose, it's a single 2-slot item. You're going to find them pretty much a lot of places. Again, tech crates are great. Interchange is really huge. You can find them in a lot of different places. You need a boatload, a metric boatload, just like the wires of corrugated hose. So please make sure that you're throwing those. If you have container space, make sure you're grabbing them. They also have been selling absolutely crazy. They were up to like 90K at one point at the very beginning of the wipe. They should not be that high at this point, but they can still represent a fantastic amount of money because you need, again, a ton of them in order to do a bunch of your hideout upgrades. Things that are not shown here, like your generator and specifically your water collector, are both going to need those pretty heavily. Spark plugs. You need a ton of spark plugs for a couple of different quests. You obviously need one to get generator going. That's another good single slot item that you can think about throwing in here. So do consider that. Let's take a look actually and look at Intel Center. Taking a look at Intel Center, topographic maps is another new thing for another new barter item, if you will, for this wipe. Really good success finding these in filing cabinets. It's going to be your best location to find them. They seem to be on the rarer side, but not so rare that you won't pick these up. I have also found these in safes, interestingly enough. So if you find yourself with some good early safe keys, like 110 or 114 on customs, 204, 214, and I think 105, all good safe rooms on customs, you should have no problem finding a handful of these. Now, Intel Center, as you can tell, is a little bit later on in the quest line, but you want to make sure that you're hanging on to these specifically. They don't sell for a ton on the flea market, about 30 to 40K, so it's a pretty good item. It's a 2-slot item, so you shouldn't have too hard of a time getting your hands on one of these if you don't find it up until that point. But make sure, and then you should know, always grab intelligence folders. These are not selling anywhere as high as they used to. The major reason ends up being is that these are now spawning both in filing cabinets as well as safes. So you're gonna have a much easier time finding these folders of intelligence, which I think is a good thing in the long run. Although I will miss those being really, really good from a selling standpoint on the flea market. Nutrition unit is another one that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. Salt ends up being something that if you come across this, make sure to grab this. You need one for the upgrade here. I believe this is the only one that you need throughout the course of this. There are some new nutrition unit crafts that you can do with salt that end up being pretty decent for the most part, but you definitely want to make sure you consider this. This is another single slot item. You'll find this in some food spawns. You'll find it on some tables. Again, I ended up finding mine on woods, so it's a pretty good recommendation to be able to grab that. Relays end up also being pretty good. If you've played Tarkov at all, this should be a pretty familiar item for you. These spawn a ton of places. I don't think you need to necessarily prioritize these, but do make sure, keep this in mind, that you are going to need a few to get some things going. I talked about rest space here, just really quick. White duct tape, make sure you grab them. Definitely a good thing to take a look at. I would normally say metal parts, but you don't need a ton of these, honestly. These are actually more useful for crafting than they are for hideout upgrades, so do consider that. We talked about quite a few of the items on this list. Pretty much all of these here are definitely ones that you want to consider throwing into your container. How would I prioritize these is probably a good thing if you're limited on container space. I would certainly take nuts and bolts, to be honest with you, probably over the 3 of the rest of these. And then it would probably be a toss-up between screws and packs of nails, and then white tape probably being this white duct tape probably being the last in that priority list. Again, the reason for is there's a lot of utility for these nuts and these bolts, probably more so than the rest of these. The rest of them end up still being good. You need a lot of them, like I said, for your hideout upgrades, but not probably as useful as these two, which is why they take the cake. Let's just quickly look at water collector here. And again, I can't highlight this enough. You need so many corrugated hose. It's kind of ridiculous at this point. So that's definitely something that you want to throw in there, you want to take a look at, and you want to make sure that you container if you can. And if you can get these out of raid and stockpile these, you'll make a boatload of money when you hit level 15. So do keep that in mind. The last one, and I don't think I'm going to be able to show it because I don't think anything needs it up front. There's certainly a bunch of gold items. You should know, always hang on to those if you end up getting into that spot. Let's just quickly take a look here. I don't think I'll be able to show it to you. Horses actually have sold really, really well, so do keep that in mind if you're looking for some good flea market things. I don't think we're going to be able to find it. Let's look at booze generator. No, I don't think so. A pipe wrench is probably another notable one, although I don't think by the time you get to Booze Generator you're going to have any concern with finding this. You'll certainly have Flea Market unlocked at that point, so shouldn't be too concerned about that. Bitcoin farm as well. You're going to need a lot of CPU fans, but again, you have plenty of time to collect these, so don't be too concerned about that. Again, traditionally, military corrugated tubes and power filters. These are both good items to grab if you end up finding them. You're going to find military corrugated tubes pretty much specifically on Lighthouse. I don't know if these are actually starting to respawn on reserve or not. I'm not sure on that. Military power filters, I will tell you, I have found pretty frequently. These were extremely rare last wipe. Not the case anymore. I have found a ton of these. I think you're going to be in a good spot. They've settled back down into like the 30 to 40 range, if I'm not mistaken, and still a good single slot item to sell. Really great from a value perspective if you're trying to maximize your raid, although don't be too concerned about having to grab a bunch of these, because I think you're going to see that you're going to come across them pretty regularly. The other one that I do want to note, which is always a good grab, but has also seen a big change in at least spawn rate, is green bats. Green bat lithium batteries were extremely rare last wipe. They are still on the rarer side, but I will tell you, by the time I got rest space is going to be the hideout upgrade where you're going to have to be concerned with those. You need 5 of them total, so it is good to hang on to a few of them. I will tell you, by the time I got to that, I think I had like 8 of them in my stash ready to go for that upgrade, and I didn't have to buy a single one. They have definitely dropped down in price. You're going to end up finding them a lot more frequently. Filing cabinets ends up being really great for these. So if I had to give any recommendation on where you should be looking for these items, my go-tos are going to be woods, interchange, and customs for the vast majority of these items I've talked about. Interchange ends up being probably one of the best. Customs ends up being really good if you want to hit a bunch of filing cabinets. I know there's filing cabinets on interchange, probably not the ones that you want to go search, except for the ones at Power Station end up being pretty good. Customs is fantastic, absolutely fantastic for filing cabinets. You're going to have a really good luck, I think, finding green bats there, topographic maps, probably maybe some folders of intelligence, your light bulbs, your duct tapes, your damaged hard drives as well end up being pretty useful. So do consider that. And then woods just generally seems to be a good overall all-around map for loot. You can find some good gold item spawns there, in addition to obviously meds and food. And meds especially you'll need for your med station upgrade and a few other things. So I sincerely hope that this was helpful for you. Hopefully you got a good idea of what's beneficial for you, not only for Hideout Progress. In addition, I hope you found some good things that are going to be good for you to hang on to and sell once you get that flea market opened up. Flea market's going to continue to fluctuate, so if you're watching this a little bit later into the wipe, or maybe a few weeks after this posted, some of the values that I talked about may have changed at this point, but should still be in pretty good shape for most of the items that I discussed, holding some pretty solid value as people continue to upgrade your hideout. Again, if you have any questions about the hideout, anything I didn't cover, or maybe there's an item that you think should have been included, please leave that down in the comments below. Certainly looking to help and make this the best possible guide for anybody jumping into Tarkov, whether you be new, or if you're returning, or if you're just looking for some advice on what you should be picking up and what you should be throwing in your container. I am Doc, Average Gamer, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. Let me do a quick plug here. Like, comment, subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. If you are watching this and you found this helpful, we have a Teaching Tarkov guide. So we post stuff pretty regularly over there. We have a bunch of videos that are doing really well that have helped a ton of players. So if you are new and you want to check some of those out, we have a playlist. Go take a look at it. I think you'll find something useful there. In addition, we are trying to hit 10K on the YouTubes before the year is out. So any help there, every subscription counts. We do sincerely appreciate it. So if you found this video helpful, we appreciate your support that way. Lastly, I'm going to flash some socials at you: Twitter, Twitch, Discord, TikTok. Join our Discord, stay up to date with the channel, Twitter, try to retweet any news, Escape from Tarkov related, or anything we find funny on Twitter. In addition to that, we do stream, again, over on Twitch. Again, all those links in the description. We do that Fridays and Saturdays, typically around 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Go pretty late, do about 4 or 5, maybe 6 hour streams. So if you're waking up, if you're on the West Coast, you'll be able to catch us. If you're waking up on the other side of the world, hopefully you wake up and you can catch us as well. We'd love to have you over there, so please do consider. We run our main account a lot, so if you want to know anything about Tarkov or have any other questions, extremely new player friendly. Welcome to help you out, maybe run some raids, get you some quest items, or just give you some advice as we get going here. So it's been long enough. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, you know what to do, and I'll close it out. Thanks so much for the support, and we'll catch you next Escape from Tarkov video. Peace.